Hey there, wonderful listeners, and welcome to another episode of the Finnovator with me, Stuart Bell, a business coach and creator of the Practice Evolutions program. Procrastination. It's one of those things that I think we all suffer with at some level or another, but the area that I'm going to talk about today is an area where I think it can really cause issues, and that is when you are, as an advisor or an accountant or mortgage broker, you're relying on a client or a prospect to get back information to you that will enable you to get on with doing what you need to do. It can honestly just completely stall any advice process or any review process, and it's something that a lot of the work I do is focused on, because I think there's really two hotspots where this can impact. Firstly, when they're not getting you stuff back, and secondly, when you're not doing the work internally, and both of them are equally problematic. There's a whole bunch of different ways of doing this. In what I do, I've developed a methodology called the escalating follow-up, which a lot of firms use, and it generally turns a non-responsive client base into one that tends to book review appointments in particular with an 85% success rate when implemented. But this is a model which is going to be tough if you are not a member of the Practice Success community, because you're not going to see some of the visuals. So if you want to see the visual that goes with this, I'd head over to success.ourdairy.com.au, join us and head over and check out the masterclass library. But if you're listening to this, you'll still get a bit out of it. But it's a model that was introduced to me a while ago by Taki Moore, who I had the opportunity to work with for a few years. And it's about how you can identify the causes of procrastination, primarily amongst your clients, but it works for team members as well. Because the secret of procrastination is it's not one thing. Procrastination can be caused by up to 4 different problems, and diagnosing or trying to solve procrastination problems when you're leveraging the wrong things can be problematic. You think the procrastination's down to being overwhelmed, but if it's not, and it's actually down to lack of clarity, the things that you would do to shift somebody who's feeling overwhelmed are completely things that would mire somebody who has lack of clarity back in exactly the space they've been. So check it out. Would love to know your thoughts on it, but I'll head over to myself for Procrastination Buster. We're going to cover off something called the Procrastination Buster. You know, there's a tipping point, I think, when you talk about procrastination, right? Everybody has that moment where you finally decide, I'm going to do something, or clients suddenly act. And it's when we're talking about procrastination, we're talking about what are some strategies from taking people from this place to that and over there. And procrastination is usually, it's about pain or hassle or difficulty. People don't do things that are difficult or big or they look hard to do because it's an equivalent of pain. It's a very mild form of pain, but it's a form of pain, right? But if we don't get that, if we get people sort of sitting over there, what happens as a business is you don't get the work done, you don't get the result, you don't get the traction, and often if your pricing model is a certain way, you don't get paid. And it can be just painful, right? Really what we want to do is we want to get to a point where through our action, it's no longer about we're going to do it later, or I'll put it off, or you know what, I'll fill in this budget cash flow form later, or I'll return and sign the form when I've got a bit of time. It's just let's do it now. And there's another big reason, which is this one. I think I've mentioned this a few times, but Einstein's one of his famous quotes was, "Compounding is the 8th wonder of the world." And he really believed that the people's lack of understanding about how compounding works was basically because for the same reason that the human mind can't quite comprehend the size of the universe. It's because it's so powerful. We spoke yesterday. If you took a cent and you doubled that cent every day, in 27 days, it'll be over $1 million. Because once you get things going, it just starts to speed up. And that's part of it as well. If we could get everybody in the country to do little things when they're in their 20s, in order to put some money away, start a savings plan, most people we know would be financially independent by the time they hit 50s. But we're against a whole bunch of stuff. We're in a world that rewards or demands instant gratification. We're in a world where it's easier to do, what's that pay thing? The click and pay, or where you can go online, tap and pay, or whatever that online thing that it is to actually take steps, right? If you don't get this right, if you don't get solve the procrastination problem, kind of 3 things happen. You end up with unresponsive clients. They don't come back to you on the email, right? They, you send 3 or 4 things, they just don't do it. They don't do the work, and 6 months later, they're still stuck in your pipeline. And you're still sitting there going, you know what, they're still a client, but I just haven't heard from them a while, which is painful, I think. You lose traction. You have this great first appointment. You paint a picture for them. They're clear. And then over time, you know that the excitement, the drive, the motivation is kind of ebbing away. Most of all, they lose focus. They lose sight of what they're actually doing and the whole point behind it, which means you have to end up re-engaging, right? You've had that experience? So long you have to sit down with the client, you have the same conversation again. Well, you've just literally probably added about 20% to your onboarding cost as a result of having to do that. So the aim of all this is to help people make progress. The three things we're dealing with are people who aren't motivated, up there, people who are lacking direction, which is this one here, distracted by other things they're not supposed to do, and over here we'll have stalled. Overwhelmed. Make sense? You with me so far? Cool. Yeah, have a go. See if you can. Okay. The strategies we have here, this one is to focus. In other words, to get people to go, you know what? Let's just do this thing and this thing well. Over here, it is to increase pace. Over here, we're aiming to get traction. That works for both of those. You with me? And finally, over here, we want to give people clarity. With me so far? So let's talk about motivated first. How we get people who aren't motivated for whatever reason, in other words, they lack the forward motion to act upon this stuff, is we need to add intensity. And the way we do that is by pulling on these two strategies. You're not motivated, we need to get them to focus and to increase the pace of what we're doing. And there's three strategies you can put in place to make this happen. The first one over here is to set some milestones. When we spoke yesterday about having that timeline, about, this is our first meeting, here's our second meeting, here's our third, that's about setting, I want to get this done by this date. And then we want to move on to this by that date. Those milestones are also about clarifying the timeframes. So not just, I want to get it done by this date, but if we get this right, this first bit's going to take 2 weeks. If we don't get it right, it could blow out to 4 weeks. You with me? Slight difference between the two. I think the third one here is get them to engage with tasks. Someone's not motivated, milestones, timeframes, and here's 3 tasks that we need to get done in the next 3 weeks. But the really key thing is the focus comes from the tasks and the milestones. The pace is about getting very clear about when we're going to get things done, and you need to shorten that time frame. Make sense? Because someone it's like Parkinson's law. Someone who is not motivated, if you give them, we'll get this done in 6 months or 6 weeks, they're going to go, I've got 6 weeks to do it, and they'll wait until the last possible minute. You with me? That's why a lot of people, you'll notice some people pay bills at the last minute. Who does that? I do. It doesn't make sense, but we do it anyway. Well, that's true, but sometimes you've got plenty of money in the account and you know you're going to pay it anyway, but you wait and then you miss the bill and you get you know what I mean? It's when you've got clients who are lacking clear direction. For whatever reason, it feels like they're drifting all over the place. And I sort of map the plan. 3 parts to it. First thing, you need to identify the problem. Get really, really clear about the problem you're trying to solve. You with me? The next bit is define the outcome. So if we solve that problem, if we get your cash flow in order, you'll save 20% a year, which means you'll be able to put it towards your home loan or pay off that debt. And how are you going to feel if you pay off that debt in the next 6 months or so? You with me? That's define the outcome. So identify the problem, define the outcome. If we solve that problem, what's that going to look like for you? By the way, you can use let's quantify. If you solve that problem, what would it look like and what would be the emotional payoff? You with me? And the final bit is set the process. So the way we're going to do this, step 1, step 2, step 3. Who's got clients who get distracted? Yeah? Okay. Shiny things. If you've got clients who are getting distracted, you do the essentials. You break it down into the essentials. Cull everything else apart from just the essentials. Again, give them clarity and just get traction with a few things. So first thing I would suggest is focus on a really specific strategy. Go deep on one thing, instead of trying to do all of them. Still with me? The second thing is I would go back, and this is really important. Get really, really clear about the result. If you've got a client who's distracted, there's a good chance they're not super clear on what the end game is for them. So going back and really, hey, can we just check in? So notice that I'm pretty clear on where we're headed and why we're doing this. I want to make sure that you're really clear as well. So can I just sit down? Why are we doing this? What's the end game we're trying to achieve in terms of your wealth, in terms of your lifestyle, in terms of what we're doing? Can we just get really, really clear about this before we move forward? You with me? And then finally, clarify the deliverables. So in order to do this, let's go back. This is what I'm going to give you. This is what I'm going to do for you. I'm going to go away and I'm going to do a bit of a deep dive. I'm going to come back with a picture of your affairs when it relates to this strategy and clear costing of what the result's going to be. Then the next step is, you with me? Who's got clients who sometimes you can notice they feel overwhelmed? Yeah? Okay, let's talk about a strategy to do that. So they're over here, they're stalled or overwhelmed. The tactic is to find momentum and make small actions. That make sense? To find momentum and make small actions. There's 3 things you can do. Simplify the plan. Someone is stalled and it's a big plan, break it down. Make it really smart. So a classic example of that is you've got someone who is just overwhelmed by your holistic plan and you're getting a feeling overwhelmed. Break it down and say, well, how about we break this down into a 6-month project? Step 1, let's get the insurance in place. Step 2, let's spend a bit of time on the cash flow. And by the way, we're not going to move on until we got that done. If you're on a monthly retainer, by the way, great way to work. Which one? That one? Simplify plan. Over here, I'm going to write this one. You want to break it down, which we've spoken about. Simplify the plan and then break it down into pieces. And the final bit over here is really small first steps. What's up? Sorry about it. So I'll go through it again. If you've got someone who's overwhelmed and stalled, you just don't seem to get them, the goal is we want to create momentum and just get small steps. The way we do that is we simplify it. Anything you're putting in front of that's complex, make it really a lot simpler. Break it down into components. And then finally, give them those small first steps. Hey, let's just focus on 3 things to begin with. Step 1, go and get me a tax return. Email it through to me. When you've done that, we'll talk about just find out how much you're spending on groceries. Great. Once you've done that, you with me? So not motivated, quickly run through it, is about adding intensity through focus and pace. The way I would do it is set the milestones, clarify timeframes, and engage with specific tasks along the way. If you've got somebody who is stalled or overwhelmed, that's about creating momentum and building in small actions, getting traction and upping in the pace. I would do this by simplifying the plan, breaking it down into pieces, and then identifying small first steps. If you've got someone who's distracted, make it about the essentials only through giving clarity and traction, which is specific strategy, define the result and clarify deliverables. And finally, if you are looking at somebody who is lacking direction, they're all over the place, it's time to sit down and map the plan, which is about giving them a focus and clarity, which is identifying the problem, define the outcome of solving that problem, and setting the process. Useful? Cool. But I find this really useful. It's a complicated diagram, but actually when you get down to it, it kind of explains it really, really well. It works for coaching, it works for clients and review, it works for client up front. And one of the things is, in order to alleviate procrastination, the first thing is you have to understand what is causing the procrastination. So there's some key principles there around, make sure whatever you're dealing with clients, you get their most important issues out first. Because if you're dealing with their issues, they can't ever turn around and indicate that you were just interested in one thing or another. Straight line advice, which is don't meander, don't offer holistic advice if what they want is X, Y, and Z. That doesn't mean don't solve the problems, don't point out the problems, but recognize the reason they're with you is for a want, and they'll come to they'll come to realize that you're right about the rest of it later on. Add value. In other words, just don't try and tell them everything you know. Just give them the information they need to know. Really get clear on their expectations. And if you feel there's a difference in their expectations, such as, they think they're going to be able to retire at 65 on the back of a B&B, you need to address that up front and revisit progress so they understand that, how far they've come and how far they still have to go. Is that cool?
Yeah.
But I kind of ask questions, and we'll talk through this particular client. What's going on here? Have you got a client who's not motivated? In other words, they just don't seem to be engaged, don't seem to have any energy. If you have a client who's lacking clear direction, you're getting a sense that they really don't know why they're doing it or where you're going. Have you got a client that's just kind of like, I can't do this right now, and they're just there's too much going on in their life? Or have you got a client who's basically too much information that's clouding the problem, as opposed to lacking clear directions, they don't know the problem to begin with. Distracted is there's just too much information, so they're not really clear on which way to go. Which, in this case, what would your gut tell you is the most likely mode that's going on here?
I'd say there's two. I'd say overwhelmed and stalled, definitely.
Okay.
And that's around the property that she's trying to buy.
Got it.
I think it's fair to say that is what was her number one concern or objective, and that's the one that still has a fair bit to go. So I know that she feels like she came to us for that. Obviously, we've done something we can do. So I think that's fair. That you didn't say this, but even me thinking about it now, if we timed it or stepped it in a certain direction, which was let's achieve the property thing. Once we've done that, these are the other things that you said are important to you, but clearly nowhere near as important to you as the property. Yeah. That probably would have been a better approach, actually.
It might have been, and maybe there was something with the Royal Commission, which is she's come in, you've said, well, there's another way of getting to where you want to, and it involves going this way first.
So we gave advice around how to buy the property, what to spend, should we buy it in her name or an investment, all that sort of stuff. We did analysis and cash flows on that.
Great.
And gave that advice. So we did not provide advice on that area, but she hasn't transacted on that area.
Okay. So that could be one part of it. Distracted seems like another one as well. That came to mind.
Yeah, definitely. I thought those two were both, but I think they're both in her wheelhouse.
You could argue she's now asking, I came in to see you guys about the property. There's the property. There's the AMP fund. There's my dad and whoever talking about that. I've got a whole bunch of stuff going on. I'm not sure what's right. And then suddenly Royal Commission comes in and it says, that is evil, right?
Yeah.
And suddenly the distractions just got worse. So my gut feeling is it's mainly distracted. So normally the way this works is once you identify what the problem is, in this case, it's distracted or property. Whoops.
Okay. If you want to
the next step is to go, right, I need to switch mode. You can't, with a distracted person, you need to do two things: get traction and provide them with clarity. So provide them with clarity on what you're doing and really get traction with one or two things. So the mode is just cut it down to the essentials. So your point about relate it back to the property and cull anything else outside of that. Just work on that one thing.
Yeah.
So usually the steps to do that is you would go back to the beginning, define the result you're trying to get. Again, this is where I think the confluences come between, the want and the need. Not saying that advice is wrong. I'm just saying that somewhere along the line, the thing she's wanted, she's decided that, she wants it more than the thing that she's doing right now. Maybe.
Yeah, great. Totally agree.
Define the result, clarify the deliverables on your side, and then get clear about the specific strategy that you're rolling out. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. 100%.
If it was overwhelmed and stalled, you'd probably do something a little bit different. Because again, overwhelmed and stalled is about you need to increase the pace at which you're acting and try and get traction. That's the way it generally works. So the mode would be you're trying to find momentum, not about getting a big win, but just getting small actions along the way. So the way I work with an overwhelmed client is I'd start with, okay, let's just simplify the plan. What we're going to do is work on this. Break it down and go, okay, we need to break it down into 4 pieces. We're going to do this first, and then say, right, let's make some small first steps. So what we're going to do first is this bit. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Yeah. So
I'd say whenever you've got a procrastinating client, grab this tool. I think it's called Procrastination Buster, and just ask that question. Am I on the mark with the 5 principles? If you've missed one, that's usually a good indication for improvement. But beyond that, ask the question, where's the client at? And the tactics you want to put in place will depend by either side. That's the mode. And then those are the 3 steps. And usually, in most cases, you'll get a reaction of some sort or another.
Yeah, this is great, man. This is great. We missed some steps. Not missed some steps, but based on what we're talking about, we could have done definitely. Yep, 100%.
That is another episode of the Finnovator, done and dusted, and it shaves a very small amount off this huge iceberg that is the procrastination problem. And I will put it on the table. I've seen more firms, more clients that I'm working with affected by the procrastination, particularly through being overwhelmed or distracted by a lot of things than ever before, particularly in the last 12 months. So I want to put it out there. In about 6 weeks from now, I am going to be looking to work with 10 firms in order to trial a new program that we're launching, which is all about accelerating scale. So if you are a business owner who is looking to grow your business in a very fast way, but you're looking to do it in a way where you implement en route the right technology, the right processes, bring on board the right people, and do it in a way that enables you to grow without hitting walls, without sustainability issues, without suffering profit gaps and all the rest of it, I'd love you to direct message me in the success community. That is practicesuccess.ourdairy.com.au. Just drop me a message. Say, hey, Stu, I'm really interested in accelerating my scale, and I will tell you more about it. As I said, because I'm launching this for the first time, I'm only going to work with 10 firms, and those 10 firms are going to get pretty much everything there is. Me, the content, unleashed. So if this sounds like something you'd be interested in, please jump into the success community. Drop me a message, because the first 10 firms that I meet with, who I think are going to be right with it, I'll sort of take them on board. Not the first 10 firms I meet with, but the first 10 firms I meet with who I think are going to be the best candidates. Then I'm going to close the doors and really focus on rolling this out. As always, if you've liked the Finnovator, please take a moment to leave some feedback. And other than that, stay tuned for the next episode.